go to the Jefferson scoping document?
The meeting doesn't stream live during the meeting, and I just checked, and it should have trouble seeing the screen.
Yeah, because you've been involved in this, representing the village.
Okay, I can open up with a brief intro. Okay, this discussion will pertain to the Jefferson project, which is the 272-unit multifamily proposal. And because the town board has identified a number of potentially significant negative environmental impacts, the environmental review project will constitute the EIS process, which is a four-stage process, which includes the scoping document, the draft environmental impact statement, final environmental impact statement, followed by the finding statement. The public hearing for the scoping session closed on February 10th, and the written record closed on February 24th. Since that time, Ferrandino and Associates and their team worked very hard to update the document to be responsive to many of the comments that we've received, both at the meetings and in writing. There's many comments came in writing. And we think this would be a good opportunity for the town board to hear from the consultant and ask any questions as we move into tomorrow night, where the scoping document is on the agenda for a vote.
Thank you. Thank you, Garrett. Vince Ferrandino and Associates. As Garrett indicated, we've been retained by the town board to represent you in the seeker review process, and obviously the first step in that process is preparing a scoping document. To my left, Steve Maffia, professional engineer, traffic engineer on staff at Ferrandino. And to his left, Carolyn Worstel, senior planner. She is a project manager working on this day-to-day. We have been working very closely with Garrett and the applicant team to make the scoping document as comprehensive as possible, and we've heard what the public has had to say, and I must say I'm very impressed by the level of knowledge by members of the public, including those from Ardsley and the unincorporated town and Dobbs Ferry and Hastings, and we do appreciate their input. It was very helpful to us sitting at both public hearings, and I'm sure to the applicant, to hear some of the concerns that have been voiced. We think that we have addressed those concerns in this scoping document, which hopefully you have before you. What we've given you is what we call the clean version of the document.
When you say address the concerns, you mean you have added in language that will be included in the scope that you haven't actually addressed?
Yes. Thank you, Francis. It's not our function to address those concerns, thank goodness. It's the applicant's function and responsibility, but we believe in a joint venture, if you will, with the applicant in a collegial way, that we've reached some accord on the comprehensiveness of the scoping document. Now, I know that in discussions with Garrett that some of the board members have some additional comments and suggestions, especially Paul, and we did receive those, Paul, last night, and we've had a chance to go through them. So I don't know, Paul, if you want to indicate those that are most important to you, and then we can hopefully respond to that.
I asked people, could you maybe just go through also the state laws relating to the timing of of this? Is a town board required by law to approve a scoping document within a certain period of time? What are the ramifications if we don't?
Yeah, technically, I think Neil Alexander, counsel to the applicant, who I don't believe is here today, indicated for the record at the continued scoping meeting, the last scoping meeting, that the 60-day requirement to adopt the scoping document had basically come and gone.
And that's a state law.
And that is state law. So we're probably now getting closer to 120 days. However, we have been, and they have been continuing to work with us, so the assumption is that If a scoping document is put on the table tomorrow evening and adopted, and I can't speak for the applicant, hopefully there won't be any challenge to that. But I think moving forward as we have, one can assume that we're moving ahead in a positive way to adopt a scope that is acceptable to the town board. But I think it's important to, unless there's some other issues that come up between now and tomorrow evening that we're not aware of or you're not aware of, that scoping document be adopted so that they can begin to prepare their draft environmental impact statement.
Okay. Among, the questions, that people, had raised, one was studies of American Legion Drive, Ashford was not included. It was brought up in a second hearing and is a major concern to many residents who worry that if Jefferson gets approved, this intersection will worsen.
Steve, you want to
Yes,
address that?
On page 14 of the draft in the traffic section, under letter B, we talk about manual traffic counts. There's like two sets of intersections. The first set were the ones that were initially done in the EAF, and which we believe are still relevant in terms of the critical nature of the impacts possible from the development. We thought about adding to that list the intersections in the second section of B that start with Lawrence Street and Stanley Avenue and 3 Ashford Avenue intersections. That ended up in that section because to ask the applicant at this point to do traffic counts along Ashford Avenue at the bridge location where the ramps are and other intersections is not going to work. He's not going to get good data because the lane is closed on the bridge. So what we did is we were asking them to qualitatively address the intersections on Ashford Avenue, supplement traffic counts that maybe have been done already, maybe in the last year or so, last 2 years, by other development studies. I believe there's one other study that was done that may have included traffic counts at 1 or 2 of the locations along Ashford Avenue. So the applicant may be able to find data that exists, that was done for another study, that he can pull that data in and use it in his analyses of that second set of intersections. The intersection of Ashford Avenue and American Legion Drive is certainly one that we could add to that second set, but like the other ones, we can't really expect current accurate data from a count at that intersection because of the changes in traffic patterns that came about with the bridge closing. So we can ask them, we can add that intersection, Ashford Avenue and American Legion Drive, in the second set of intersections, and if they can find numbers, great, they can do a detailed analysis. If not, we're asking them to qualitatively talk about traffic at that intersection, how they may affect it, how much of their traffic is going to go through that intersection as far as the distribution is concerned, and so on. So that we could add that intersection if it's important to the board.
I would want to feel that I'd rather be as comprehensive as we can, because I feel the more comprehensive we are, the more people will buy into whatever the findings are.
Okay.
That's just my own thought. The other question is study times are between 4 and 6, but in Ardsley, 3 p.m. is a busy time, especially on Fridays.
It's not only on Fridays.
Yeah, it's when school gets out.
When school gets out,
Every day,
it's
yeah,
really hard.
right. Again, counting from 2 to 4, say, in the afternoon, at this point, it's not going to give us, at the critical intersections, an accurate idea as to what's going on. Again, on page 14, though, letter H, we asked the applicant to discuss the traffic, school bus and other traffic patterns, and to compare, if they can, what the volumes of traffic along Ashford Avenue and Route 9A are relative to the peak hours that they do have good counts and are doing a good fact-based analyses on. The way that they can do that is by referencing the 24-hour counts that they've done, again, on 9A, that they may be able to find from the state website on Ashford Avenue, and tell us what the difference is between traffic at 3 o'clock in the afternoon versus traffic at 5 or 6 in the afternoon. or in the evening, which is the peak hour, the rush hour. If they show that the peak hour or a peak at 3 o'clock, which encompasses the traffic related to the school dismissals, if that volume is actually lower than the PM peak hour that they are analyzing in detail, then we've gotten from them an analysis of the worst-case scenario. They have the higher volume traffic, which is 4 to 5 or 5 to 6, whatever that hour is, and they've added to it the peak volume that they're generating from the development. And that's based on the ITE trip generation rates for that development, and it is basically a peak or the highest number of vehicles that they're generating. So we put their high number in a mix with the highest number on the street, and again, worst-case scenario is developed. If they analyze that, they're going to come up with certain levels of service and maybe some mitigation that's required, but you got to know that if they do that for that peak time, then any other hour during the day that may be slightly lower than that, at which time they're not generating their peak volumes either, is going to be covered by the analysis that they did for the peak condition. So we're going to get them by, in letter H, to discuss that and to show us what the volumes are during the peak times based on the 24-hour counts. And if they're higher, I guess that, the other option is if it proves out that that other peak hour is important, then that's the kind of thing that they can address in an FEIS.
But wouldn't it make sense just, to just add the 3, if we know it's 3 PM, I mean, it doesn't really, if we're going to be studying that anyway, this way.
Right, what I'm saying is that we don't know that the 3 PM is higher than the peak hour that they are analyzing.
So why don't they find out?
Which we're asking them to do. They'll find
No, but I'm
out.
saying, should the language of the document be a little bit more, more specific? Because if we have it in there, then they have to answer that. If they don't put it in, then they don't
Right.
have to answer
Well,
it.
the last sentence in H, I don't know if that does it, it says generally compare area road traffic during school dismissals to the weekday PM peak hour of the roadways.
But to generally compare could mean just a qualitative assessment as opposed to a quantitative study of the traffic. So if you can tighten that up, it would help.
I think so.
Sure.
Then the lead, the next question, lead certificate is mentioned, but not gold lead standard, as brought up in the hearings. And, should we be, and only gold lead design is sufficiently environmentally beneficial for a project on that scale?
So if I could address this one, the town has, I believe, Chapter 230 is the local lead law, and the applicant will be required to comply with that. And through that process, which will run concurrent with the environmental review process as well as the site plan approval, they will elaborate on, what level of standard that building can be from an environmentally sound building design perspective.
Okay. Are we going to be looking at, whether the buildings of 4 and 5 stories is out of character for, for the area? Is that something that's going to be, studied?
Yes, that will be. Yes, that will be studied. That is going to be in the. Let me find it.
Visual impact.
The visual impact section, which is starting on page 17, visual aesthetic neighborhood character. So that will be part of the analysis.
Okay. Another question that people have raised pertains to the underground parking garage for about 170 cars. As you know, it's on a floodplain, and I'm wondering if you could advise if that's going to be studied.
Whether that's specific because it's on a
The
floodplain?
underground garage.
It will be studied.
It's part of the proposed action, and it will be studied by the applicant, and we'll review it for purposes of flooding as well as from a traffic.
Or the
and parking
underground,
perspective.
parking, is that part of the scoping?
Well, it's part of the proposed action, so if it's part of the proposed action for the project, then it will be studied from the perspectives that you mentioned.
Right, but it doesn't have to be specifically added to the scoping document.
I don't think so, no.
I think it's covered, but we'll take another look.
Yeah. You know, another issue that people have focused on is, you know, the bridge construction. Since the exit from the Sawmill River Parkway has been closed, the traffic in Ardsley, you know, actually, it's had some positive impacts also because people aren't going people are not going on the Sawmill River Parkway. But what has not improved is traffic to Lawrence, both north and southbound at rush hours. And will we be reviewing maybe a northbound turning lane on 9A in Lawrence? And, you know, possibly keeping the exit on the Sawmill River Parkway from being rebuilt. You know what I'm saying? These are thoughts that some people, you know, have had that maybe, you know, should be explored.
Right.
Is there any way the state to really look at that again?
I
think Francis had an experience in the evening when it was raining, and I use that a lot, and I find that a very dangerous turn.
Yeah, I spoke to the police chief yesterday, and I spoke to Assemblyman Benante and Senator Cousins yesterday also, and we're gonna. The chief is trying to arrange a meeting, I think on March, on-site meeting. You know, I wrote it down. I think it's on March 30th. Sorry, I think it's March 31st, I think. And he's gonna have, we're gonna invite the various police chiefs, the county commissioner of public safety. We're gonna try getting state representatives, you know, mayors, everybody at that site at the same time. And this way, you know, if everybody's there and you have a bunch of police chiefs and public safety people, village officials there at the same time, hopefully, you know, everybody will take it seriously because it's definitely dangerous. You know, you use it as a activist, so I'm quoting you.
What time is that for?
We haven't, he's trying to schedule a time.
Let us know, and you may want to let the applicant know as well.
Yeah.
Might be helpful for them to be there, so we can all listen and see, because it is an issue, obviously. but
It's,
whether
you know,
this
everybody's
development's being
obvious
built or
that
not.
it's a danger.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the last Thursday in March, but we have to get the timing.
I can't be there, but I think you have my email explaining.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you send that?
Yeah, sorry that I'm asking so many.
Well, I just wanted to address, as far as the lane on the Sawmill River Parkway, we are asking them in the mitigation section to evaluate certain mitigations, and that's included in that request. It's a pretty long list, too. There's a second part of it.
I know, but I think that the letter had gone up, and then another letter came back, and the state feels that this is okay, and they don't see this as an issue. And I think that's what's really disturbing, is the state's response to our concern.
Right.
I mean, are they waiting for a fatality there before they're gonna do something?
No deceleration lane,
I saw that, I saw the letter.
there's no change in speed limit, and there's a sharp turn into oncoming traffic. If you try to avoid the guardrail, which most people will try to do, because it's very close to the turning lane.
Right.
You're gonna go wide, and it's only after you make the turn that you realize that you're getting into the traffic lane.
I would admit, as a traffic person, that I'm a little confused as to why the state wouldn't go back to entertaining a right turn exit lane, a decel lane, basically.
Yeah.
And one existed there before they
That's
made the
right,
changes,
that's
so
right.
they took it
But
away.
it makes
So.
it much worse, because all of a sudden, there was no warning when they did that, all of a sudden they took it away.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Would it help, Paul, if Steve, as a PE, prepared a memo based upon his review, making a recommendation? I mean, this
Yeah,
is,
that would be great.
this is objective, someone not officially, well, officially from the town, but as a professional who's actually analyzing it. I think that may be helpful.
I think it would be very helpful.
Short memo, yeah.
That's great.
Just one quick note to back up on a point that was made before. With regard to the parking is structured, but it's not underground. So all parking's at grade, and then there's levels of structured parking. So that's not an issue that needs to be studied here. And the
Okay.
stormwater is, yeah, right,
Okay.
which is covered comprehensively.
Other questions, why is any development proposal being considered for a contaminated property before a site cleanup? The Village of Hastings has been working for years to get their waterfront cleaned up before any development comes in. Is that?
Well, I think in general, basically, part of this application, if you will, is to clean up the site. And on the positive side, without this application, and we're not making any judgments as to the merits of the application, but without the application, the likelihood of that being basically remediated is slim to none. So on the positive side, hopefully, as part of this development, with Brownfield's grant in place, the site will be remediated. But obviously, it's not going to be approved by the town or anyone unless remediation is part of that approval.
Has there been, one of the thoughts, some people have, mentioned to me, when you're dealing with contamination, people, very few people really have been focusing, public attention on the impacts of a contaminated site. And is there any analysis or studies, are there health risks to, to residents, right now? If you have a contaminated site and we basically, do nothing, are we jeopardizing, people's lives? I mean, is this something that should be treated with more urgency than it is being treated? And are there like any independent analyses of the extent of this?
I mean, I don't know the answer to that question directly because I'm not an engineer, and Rob DiGiorgio couldn't make it today, but we can look into that. But I would assume, and I don't know if JMC wants to address it because obviously they're in the middle of this, but unless the site is leaching, actively leaching, and there's evidence of contamination spreading beyond the site, then, that becomes a major problem that has to be taken care of immediately. But haven't looked into the status of the site per se, and that's something that in the existing conditions that would go into the DEIS, the applicant would be bound to do. But if you don't want to wait for that DEIS to be filed, you may want to raise that question with the applicant now, since they do have an active application before the town.
Right, but I'm wondering if the scoping document, if, there should be more, since we're studying, issues, isn't this something that people in the immediate area would be, be interested in? What's your feeling?
Yeah, I mean, people are aware that there's contamination there, but
They don't know,
they have
understand
no
it.
idea what the status is.
Right, and, I'm just sort of curious, it's a factor that I think should be analyzed. The other issue is, why is the town not working with a property owner, ASCO, to clean up the property, and, they're using the comparison of Hastings was working with Atlantic Richfield?
Yeah.
Why are we waiting for, why don't we put the pressure on ASCO to clean it up?
Axel,
Yeah.
The current owner.
the current owner, Axel.
Is there any reasons for that?
I mean, that would be a town board decision. I mean, obviously, speak to your engineering department, see if they have any data, see where they are with it, and it may make sense to approach the owner at this particular point in time, just to ascertain whether or not there is any hazardous contamination that's spreading out from the site. I don't know the answer to that question, but that's a legitimate concern. And I know it's been raised indirectly, at least, by members of the public as well.
So do you think we should reach out to ask, to the company?
Yeah, I think that's exclusive of the scoping document,
Yeah,
but
that's something
we
separate.
can delve into that further.
Okay.
That's something separate.
Let's see. Another question that people had asked, why should the zoning board grant a special permit use since the development will create a condition of hazard with increased traffic that cannot be mitigated? And that would be studied.
Yeah. That's part of the secret process.
But we can't make a determination.
Until, right,
Okay.
correct.
Ultimately make a determination independent of the town board.
Why isn't New York State DEC brownfield plan not included on the list on page 2?
Page 2 lists town approvals per se. So technically, it's not a town approval. However,
It's listed, right,
it is-
it's
they
listed
are-
on
they
page
are
7.
listed
yeah.
as an involved agency, Paul, which does have approval process, certainly over the remediation plan. So technically, it should not be on page 2, but
Right.
it's on the list of involved agencies.
Under number 14 on page 7.
Yeah.
Why has documentation of existing contamination in the adjacent wetland not been included? And why has no mitigation been proposed for ongoing contribution of contamination from the wetland following completion of the project?
Well, again, that would be part of the disclosure in the DEIS. That will be analyzed, looked into, and if there are potential adverse impacts, they will have to propose mitigation.
Has there been a finding that the nearby wetlands are contaminated? That seems to be making a statement that they are.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how that's known.
No, I'm not sure. Why have dates and details of required notification about the brownfield plan, including any comments submitted to New York State DEC during the prescribed comment periods, not been requested?
Again, we just assumed that that is part of their application process to DEC. We can include that sentence. It's basically understood. If the town board feels more comfortable just including it.
Yeah,
The applicant's going to do it anyway, but we can include that.
I'd include it,
Fine.
you know, I'd rather be more
Okay.
comprehensive. How come there's no detailed cost estimates for the environmental remediation?
That's going to be part of their application to the state, to DEC. All of that will be disclosed as part of that application, and which will be an appendix, if you will, to the DEIS.
Should, you know, page 22, 1XB, include detailed cost estimates?
No, it's part of the scope. We can mention in the language that you want, you would like to see that in the DEIS, but it can't be included in the scope because
Could you mention in the language?
we can ask. Yeah.
Why have other methods of site remediation such as five-term mediation not been requested as alternative uses? That's,
I actually discussed this last night with Rob DiGiorgio, and this is from our civil engineer and brownfields expert. Photo remediation is a passive method that's used rarely. It was actually popular, 15 to 20 years ago. It's not really used as a current state-of-the-art methodology. That's the reason why, I guess. Again, I'm not speaking for the applicant, I'm just speaking for our own engineer who does this for applicants as well in other communities, so we don't think that would be relevant.
okay. I'm almost done. Why hasn't a plan including financial remuneration been requested to deal with unavoidable long-term impacts should intractable site contamination lead to severe resident health problems?
Well, again, that's a conclusion that may or may not be validated by the DEIS. If that is an issue, then they will have to include all that information as part of the site remediation and mitigation.
And Peter Marcus resides in ours and has been helpful representing, the village during the whole summer. And you had a couple, questions. Do you want to, should I ask them or do you want to ask?
I can ask him. I sent an email to Garrett, I don't know if he shared it with you, about adding 2 bullets onto page 2. That list of approvals from the town should also include the tree removal permit from the planning board
Yeah.
and the street opening permit.
Yeah, those are town approvals, and they can be added.
Okay, good. And I also had one question. On page 15, there are several references to build year 2023. What's the significance of that language?
It's in the draft.
Oh, it's, yeah.
C1.
We, in the standard traffic impact study, we analyze existing conditions as a base situation. And then we project into the future a time period where the project is built and fully occupied and generating traffic. In this case, because of the issues with remediation of the site, it's going to take a few years, basically, before they can even put something in the ground to start building a building. We felt that 2023 was an appropriate future time period in which they remediate the site and then get going on the building of the project and then renting it or selling the units until they're
So
fully
the
occupied.
estimate is that it would take until 2023 for the building to be up and running?
Yes,
Okay.
This was done in concert with the applicant as well.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else on the board have any other questions? And I know the applicant is here and for equal time. Do you have any questions that you'd like to have asked or included in the scoping document that's not in?
The scoping document is very comprehensive.
Right.
Okay, so, and again, for people, the public, there are state laws that we have to comply with. And, and all the scoping document approval does is begin the study rather than, we're not saying we're for or against the project, we're just commencing a study and basically these are the issues that are going to be studied.
So what I would suggest is that you take the draft that we have posted on the web, track changes, add what you have said you would be adding today, then post that so people will see what the changes have been and vote to vote for this, so we can then vote on as a group.
Would you be able to email me, the changes? What I've been doing is, I've been doing links to work sessions so people I could post the changes as well as this video so people could, watch, the discussion and have a better idea of, the reasons why we're doing this.
Sure.
Is there any other things that you want to say that you left out, or?
No, I don't think so, and I'll have that, we can have that prepared before the end of the day today.
That's great. Perfect. Good. So, excellent.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you tomorrow night.